Hey, Prayer Podcast is all about content to come help you along your journey. And if you're enjoying the content, why don't you help a friend and share? And as always, we'd love to have you join our family. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. All right, let's get into our episode. Hey, we're at it again, another Prayer Podcast episode. And as always, I'm Joe.
I'm Candace. What's up, y'all?
What's going on? We've shared with you guys, Para Podcast is about talking about the institutions of this world and their relationship to faith and how faith should permeate through all the institutions of this world, right? Whether it's family, government, politics, business, media and entertainment, you name it, right?
Yep.
And lately we've been really focused on what we feel is the most important institution.
Yeah.
The family,
Right.
right? And we were thinking, the family, relationships, well, the cornerstone of that is marriage. And marriage is like what we believe is the most important foundational pillar that builds society, right? And often when we think of marriage and we enter marriage, we're thinking about how it's going to serve us, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
We're thinking about love and romance.
Yep.
But after we're in it, I think we come to find that there's so many nuances to marriage.
Way more.
It becomes what I think is one of the greatest educational tools in life.
Yeah.
And man, we wanted to talk about like the facets and the nuances and the life lessons and the educations that marriage gives you
Mm-hmm.
and what you now know about marriage, like what you didn't know before
Yeah.
and what you now know about marriage,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I'll say going into relationships and how I conceptualize things and what I thought about marriage, I really didn't think, or I don't feel I thought about it like maybe the average person did. Just romanticizing it. And it's because of, my life story and journey and the family I come from and all those types of things. I've shared in other episodes that, growing up the son of a pastor, it created an intersection of a couple of things. It made family about faith, but on top of family being about faith, it made family about like purpose, something greater than just being a family.
Mm-hmm.
So that made my concepts about relationships kind of transcend general happiness and romance and all that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, I was pretty informed and I had a pretty good picture of what it really should be about. And now, 15 years later, having the experience, I realize I still didn't know what I thought I knew. I had no idea
Yeah.
of all of the life lessons. I really feel like marriage is a mystery. It's something that can't be just encompassed in few words
Mm-hmm.
and explained and articulated in few words, right? There's so many components of it that you take away, from the experience, and we're still, of course, on the journey.
For sure. Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll do it justice, even talking about it today,
Yeah.
right? What was your picture of marriage prior to coming into it? Like, what it was about, what you thought it would be, what even, spiked your interest in it prior to actually crossing over into it?
So for me, my interest in marriage was spiked early on. Like as a kid, I always knew I wanted to be married. I was fortunate to grow up with my parents both being in the house. They were together for I think now they've been married like 30 years or something like that. So, you know, just seeing them, I always knew that I wanted to have a relationship like theirs one day. So that was kind of my initial context. Um, and then, of course, I grew up in the Disney era. So
Mhm.
you had all the Cinderella stories and the knight in shining armors coming to save the princesses. And
Oh,
so,
man.
you know,
Yeah, it's just interesting. So I grew up in a house of all boys.
mm,
My dad had 4 boys,
hmm
and, so we didn't do a whole bunch of the Disney princesses and all that type of stuff, so maybe he saved me. Maybe he saved me, and then, I mean, I wouldn't have been the princess. I would be the person having to slay the dragons and doing all that anyway. So maybe, maybe my concept wouldn't have been so skewed by it. But my people saved me from that a bit. So
hmm
oh man, you had saw Cinderella. I
Oh
mean, who
yeah,
was your favorite?
everything.
Who was the greatest archetype of this Disney experience of love that you dreamt of?
You know what's so funny? I think all of them were because every last story that I can think of, I don't know if anybody else remembers these, but we had these humongous, like huge, gigantic Disney princess books.
Hmm.
They were probably about this big and like that size. So me and my sister got like a box of them. My mom probably still has them somewhere in her attic to this day.
Wow.
So we had Cinderella, we had The Little Mermaid, we had, Beauty and the Beast, we had Aladdin, and those are the only ones I can think of at the moment.
So those books may be poisoning the minds of your nieces right now.
Well, no, because my sister, my sister probably has made sure they don't read those books so that they can have a more realistic context of relationships, right?
Right, right.
But I will say, growing up in that age, um, that I'll just say for now, that was a factor. Having this that influenced the romanticized, version of marriage that I had.
Yeah,
And then also you had music back then, all the love songs and R&B was popping, so
yeah,
that was a thing that influenced what my expectations of marriage would be. And then of course church. Like church was
yeah,
like a huge
yeah,
um influence in like what I thought my marriage would be, and it also helped me see the things that I knew I didn't want my
yeah.
marriage to be.
Before we hit the faith thing, let's talk about the music. I mean, the music nowadays, the music is savage.
Oh man,
So
it's
the music is giving no hope for
oh
marriage now.
yeah,
But
no, it
but but
ain't.
when
It's
we were
it's
young,
fun.
though, you had all the songs, man. Just today,
Yeah.
today I was at the barbershop
Mhm.
and some Case came on.
Yeah.
Summer afternoon.
Right.
Like, after June. It was, I'm missing
Sing
you. Yeah,
you.
that joint
Yeah.
was jamming. I said, oh man, music ain't like that no more. So, the
No.
the Sweet Nothings was being sung back
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
The other
Yeah.
day, I took our son out with us somewhere, and I didn't even tell you this, but man, I just threw some Boys to Men on there. I was rocking all the throwback Boys to Men
I love
song.
Boys to
Close
Men.
your eyes,
Right.
make a wish. I was man hitting them,
That's
right?
perfect for him too. Like that's right up his alley.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so
So yeah, I mean,
funny.
back then the music,
Yeah, the
it
music
was
was it,
giving
man.
it was giving
It
hope,
was
man.
giving, it was like, giving that romance and that
Yeah,
love
yeah,
and singing in
yeah,
the
yeah.
rain,
Oh yeah. Oh
dancing.
man, men were clutching the air. They
Yeah,
was
yeah,
grabbing air back then still.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, all those
So the
things.
music was informing it, and then
Mhm,
because you grew up in a faith space, seeing the relationships,
mhm,
and I'm sure the information that was being shared about relationships
mhm.
in that space was shaping some things.
Yeah, we can get to that
Yeah.
more later. Yeah.
Okay. So
Mhm.
what else was there? So there was the Disney princesses. There was music.
Yeah.
There was faith
Family.
spaces, and then there was family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Family. I know there's probably a lot of different tentacles to it, but what would you say is the most poignant part about family that you saw about relationships that made you say, "Oh, I want that"?
Yeah. You know what? It was my grandparents. Like my grandparents being together, being married forever, my parents being together. My parents met when they were young, like teenagers. And so
Mm-hmm.
they were like, sweethearts and grew up with each other and got married and have been together forever. Um, seeing my aunts and uncles, like,
Yeah.
so many people in my family were married, and all the families were together when we came together as family at
Hmm.
grandma's house on Sundays. Like, we all were there, the families, all the kids are playing together, hanging with your cousins. Like,
Oh yeah.
all of that informed my picture of what I wanted when I became an adult, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, I feel like there's a lot of directions we can go with this. You're sparking a number of things because I was
Mm.
similar.
Yeah.
You know, my grandparents, particularly on my father's side, they stayed in a neighborhood that they were in the center of a cul-de-sac,
Mhm.
and my grandparents had 9 kids, so
Mhm.
almost every weekend or every other weekend, all of the families would come together at my grandparents' house. And, when I go back to that house today, it's like, how do we all fit in here,
Yes.
But we would do it, man. We would be all
Yeah.
running around, and there was a big, what we thought was this mountainous rock in
Right.
the middle of that cul-de-sac. Now it's still
It's
a rock,
it's
but
like
it's
the
like,
size of this couch.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure it's because all the rain and
The erosion
the
over
erosion
time.
over
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
But when we were
yeah.
kids, this rock was a little mountain. So we used to run around all over that, cul-de-sac and that little rock and stuff in the center of the
Mhm.
cul-de-sac, and be upstairs and downstairs at my grandparents' house and eating and all that stuff. So it was the greatest time.
Yeah.
But my grandparents were like these pillars, and the respect that
Mhm.
was I've given to them and all that type of stuff. So that definitely informed the idea of like keeping family together
Mhm.
and getting to this respectable place that
Mm.
you become this epicenter, this like gravitational pull, this
Mm.
magnet to
Mhm.
those that you love to come back to you
Mhm.
and connect and kind of center around you, and the love and holidays and all the different stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was there for
Yeah.
sure, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So across these things, I'm sure life wasn't just picture perfect in every way,
Yeah.
but was it predominantly kind of romanticized, like across these different?
Oh, yeah. For me, it was.
Okay,
Oh, very much so.
okay.
Like, romanticized, like in like rom-com romanticized, like like disgusting level of like
Oh man, oh man,
romanticized,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh
You're Julia Roberts. You're, pick one. Yeah.
yeah.
Somebody standing outside your window in the
No, no,
rain.
no, not Julie Roberts. It's like love, more like, well, not Love and Basketball.
Oh, okay.
Like Brown Sugar, like Love Jones,
Okay,
like,
okay,
you know
Sanaa.
what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I got it.
You
I got
know?
it. So that desperate love, like,
That like we've always knew. I
we
always
always
knew you
knew
were the one.
since I was
Since I
12.
was, yeah, exactly. Since
Yeah. Yeah.
from the time we were in kindergarten, I knew.
Oh man. Okay, one of those.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
How about you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a little different.
Yeah.
Like I said, I grew up all brothers.
Mhm.
So, we weren't watching the Disney movies,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and because I grew up in my particular father's house,
Mhm.
very authoritative man,
Mhm.
and, was in the military for years. So that came along with it. Plus, being a preacher and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then our life was so given to kind of building ministry.
Mhm.
What that did was that put me behind a veil
Yeah.
of relationships trying to do that type of thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that really informed some perspectives for
Mm.
me.
Mhm.
But then I had my extended family. Like I said, grandparents had 9 kids. The majority of them were boys and men.
Yeah.
9 kids was with only 2 daughters,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then of all of those 9 kids, most of those my aunts and uncles and my parents had minimally about 3 kids each.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a solid 20, almost 30,
Mhm.
and of those, all boys.
Yeah.
Only 2 or 3 girls
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
generation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody having boys. So there was a lot of testosterone going on. A lot of testosterone going on. So, you know, um, with my grandparents being such a pillar, I think the ideas around relationship began to be centered around, yes, wanting to have like love and romance, but wanting to build something respectable,
Mhm.
wanting to build something that lasted,
Mhm.
wanted to build and bring someone that could help manifest that,
Mhm.
but that person would be respectable,
Mm.
right? And
Mm.
someone you could bring home with no shame,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And so that was just a general family thing. Like the
Mhm.
family had this standard that you
Yeah.
don't just bring anybody home,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
But then when you bring that to my immediate family, when you add this extra element of like faith and ministry and all that type of stuff, it was like, and no one said it to me, but I think I internalized a greater level of pressure
Mm.
that this needed to be beyond just an idea of being happy.
Mm.
You know, it needed
Mhm.
to be something deeper and
Mhm.
something that's more like we have a collective chief aim, we
Mhm.
have a collective purpose,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And that got coupled with some fears too,
Yeah.
because the things that I saw happen to families trying, particularly to do this kind of like faith ministry thing, that seemed like they were not in sync.
Mhm.
Oh man, it
Yeah.
seemed like such a recipe for disaster
Mhm.
that it kind of created some fears for
Mhm.
me. And then you have regular life experiences too. We all have family and family experiences and things like that. And you see the good things and you see the bad things.
Yeah.
So, you know, but then lastly, I'd say we all have our just general life experiences that whether it's consciously or subconsciously or unconsciously, whichever, you don't realize that you're looking for your relationship to kind of almost heal and come and serve a piece of you
Mhm.
that you may have felt has been underserved in your life before, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So those are some of the things that kind of informed my picture of what marriage should be.
Mhm.
And I thought I was coming into it smarter than the average bear because of these concepts.
Yeah, I would have thought the same because, I always felt like, especially when we met and as I got to know you, your perspective on marriage was very mature.
Hmm.
Like, your expectations, what you were looking for, and even how you approached dating.
Yeah.
So it let me know like, oh wow, he thinks differently and getting exposure to that perspective.
Hmm.
But did you know that you wanted to be married from an early age?
Oh, I always knew I wanted to be married because I just love women. So that's number one. I knew I got to have it. Got to.
Yeah.
All right.
That's
I
so
knew I
funny.
wanted to be married,
Yeah.
but I knew I wanted to truly be happy. And
Mm,
meaning like not just your general superficial happy,
got you.
but more like, man, this relationship is fulfilling.
Mm,
Like,
mhm,
this person, like we have a collective purpose
mhm.
and we're like this is my ace,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
we're building things together, and like this is my ride or die, like we're doing
Mhm.
it together.
Yeah.
And what informed that is because once again seeing people really in the faith-based space, to where in the older church there was a lot of more male dominated leadership,
Mhm. That's
and
true.
so you had a spectrum of um, wife partner
Mhm.
archetypes.
Okay, yeah.
Most predominantly, man, you might have had nice, hey, wave at the people, baby handkerchief,
Yeah.
wearers,
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
where, hey, man,
Yeah.
beautiful,
Mhm.
nice, respectable wave,
Mhm.
Oh, man,
Yeah, I
don't let her
remember
be able
those.
to sing.
Mhm.
Oh, man,
Mhm. You do worship before the sermon?
yeah, oh,
Yeah.
baby, we're going to have you come sing a solo
Yeah, I
for
remember
the
those
people,
those
those
days.
types.
Yeah, yeah.
But once you got behind the veil,
Mhm.
like if they were not truly on one accord and truly have a solid relationship with God,
Yeah.
if they didn't truly know each other for real.
Mhm.
Because what I found is that a lot of times people would have gotten married in a different season of their life,
Mm.
to where they might have been out in the streets or
Mhm.
might been out doing God knows what
Mhm,
when
mhm.
they got married.
Mhm.
And I think in our parents' generation, a lot of them got married very
Oh,
early,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it sounds like you was itching for that same thing,
I was. If I could have found, like, in my mind, if I could have been just like my parents and found my sweetheart person, like, early on, then I would have been like, oh, we always knew each other. We grew up together. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
loved that story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you almost had it until I just cannonball wrecked into that, but we
No,
talk
I
about that in
still
a
we did, but
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
still
yeah,
I still had that to a degree because
yeah,
we
yeah.
still got married very young,
Yeah,
you know?
we did, but so
Yeah.
go check out the Our Story episode,
Yes.
and we will talk about how she had a whole plan to fulfill her almost high school sweetheart early marriage dreams, and, oh, man, I wrecking balled that unintentionally, but I
I
did,
was gonna
and
say.
here we are, right? But we still got married pretty early,
Yeah, we did.
I was 25, you were 23, right?
Mhm.
And, so for me, seeing people who got married like super early and they were different people. So what that meant was the thing that originally drew them together
Mm.
might not have been this newfound devotion to faith, spirituality, purpose, and ministry, if you will, right?
Mhm.
So whatever now has brought them to this place of like feeling called to do ministry, they weren't aware of that prior.
Yeah.
And now they're becoming these new people and they're feeling this mandate, if you will,
Mm.
to be leaders and build things and all that type of stuff.
Mhm.
But the fabric of who they are, they may not be on the same pace. They may not really be in sync. They may not be in the same life and spiritual rhythm with
Mhm.
each other.
Yeah.
And the more prominence, a couple might get, well, now they're getting more and more on the forefront.
Yeah.
And this pressure to fit within, a model,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And underneath, they may be imploding,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And you may see that implosion publicly,
Mhm.
or you may not see it publicly, but I found often the place you can see that implosion was through their children,
Yeah. Yeah.
and things like that. So I seen that a lot. I also saw that, trying to be a leader, um, in the faith space is only one version of trying to be a leader out in this world.
Yeah.
And I found that quite often the gate that was the opening for that person to take a huge fall or a trip somewhere, it was through the gate of their relationship and their family,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
With some disconnect,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
And because of that disconnect, they would try to hold it together, but at some point it would implode,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And it created a major concern for me. Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I
I can
can't just
imagine
marry
that.
just
Yeah.
to marry.
Y
I have to find a
Mm.
person that we are like in sync. We're on the same page. We both have a real solid relationship with God. Like, not just I got one and you kind of have one,
Yeah.
and all that, or you're doing this for me, all that type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be like, no, we both are in tune, we're in touch, all that. But then there was this other side too, to where because, being so steeped in this faith space, I saw that people were so busy being religious and trying to be these religious pillars
Mm.
that it seemed like their actual a relational life like just sucked. Like
Yeah.
these people don't really get along. Like these
Mhm.
people they don't laugh with each other. They're
Mm.
not having fun and enjoying each other.
Yeah.
They do nothing but religious activity.
Yeah.
But if they're not doing something religious, who
Who
are
are
they?
they?
And who
Yeah.
are they together
Yeah.
too?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those were things of concern for me too.
Mhm.
And so it really made me say, oh man, I got to really choose very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this type of stuff was on my mind at very early ages,
Mhm.
like teenager
Yeah.
ages,
Yeah.
and I'm not talking about late teenager. I'm talking about 13,
Mhm.
stuff like that.
Mhm.
I was already thinking about these type of things because
Yeah.
of the things that I saw,
Yeah.
So because of that, I really thought, oh yeah, I'm coming into this eyes pretty wide open,
Yeah.
and I still can say,
Mhm.
oh, there was so much that I still couldn't have dreamt that
Yeah.
the education of marriage really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so interesting you talked about that nuance. I'll say for me with the church part, I didn't I think the biggest thing that I saw was it seemed like back then, families were serving in their separate capacities.
Hmm.
So, like you said, like women had their roles and then men had their roles. So there were moments where men and like husbands and wives would serve, but serve separately,
Mm.
in certain capacities too. And for me, that was an observation that I took. Like, if, you know, uh, members of certain leadership roles were serving on certain days, but then the men are in the parking lot ministry on other days, or
Hmm.
whatever. Um, you had so much time that was spent away from each other,
Hmm.
serving in church. And I always admired that heart of service. I learned a lot about community and service, and knew I wanted to serve in ministry. But I always knew I wanted to be with my husband one day, doing it together. Like I
Mm.
never wanted to feel like we were in two separate places. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I say, doing ministry and stuff like that and serving in church and all that. Um, to your point, having a heart of service is a great thing,
Mhm.
but it also can be very consuming
Yeah.
and take up so many aspects of your life if you're not really aware
Mhm.
and really paying attention.
Mhm.
Um, and one of the components you can really miss is the subtleties of it kind of being divisive, to your relationship too,
Yeah. Yeah.
because people could get so caught up in the roles of whatever it is they have to be to that organization, and they're giving so much of themselves to that.
Yeah.
And it is taken away from them really doing the real work and the quality time with each other,
Mhm.
and being united with each other. And then sometimes, which is a whole nother conversation, some institutions can actually truly be divisive to your relationship. They're
Mhm.
separating you as a unit
Mhm.
because of the demand of your devotion to the organization,
Yeah.
to different auxiliaries and departments and leaders and stuff
Mhm.
like that.
Mhm.
To where, a husband could be giving more of his time to the church than his family, or a wife could be
Right.
giving more of her time to,
Right.
the
There's no
church or some leader
balance.
than the family, right?
Yeah.
And its order of priority can get out of whack if you're
Yeah.
not intentional about it, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked about, because I pivoted down that path because a lot of things you said were familiar to
Mm.
me.
Mhm.
Disney, family, church.
Mhm.
I feel like there was a fourth one that I'm missing. Disney, family, church.
And just parent. Oh, you said family, so parents.
Yeah, yeah, and the
Oh, the
romanticism about it,
music
and
and yeah,
music,
yeah,
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 and music.
yeah.
So it seems like it lived in this very like endearing,
Very lofty place in my
lofty place
imagination. Yes.
in your mind.
Hmm.
Okay.
Even with I've mentioned this before. Like as a little girl playing Barbie dolls, like
Yeah, yeah,
Barbie and Ken were getting married to each other.
yeah,
Thinking about one day when I have my wedding dress, what it's gonna look like, and what colors would I have, and
yeah, yeah,
all the
yeah,
things.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, with you and I in particular, I am intimately familiar with the intersection between these two ideas. Like,
Yeah.
you were very focused on the romanticism
Very much so.
and the, loftiness of it.
Mhm.
And I was ultra focused on like the purpose
Yeah.
of it,
Yeah.
and or what I thought the purpose of it was,
Mhm.
and the direction and the vision and all that
Yeah.
should come along with marriage,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And just the intersection between these two things alone was quite an education,
Yes,
right?
it was.
um so let's talk about some of that. And then, I know that's our specific experience,
Mhm.
but just begin also talking about just the other educations about marriage. So let me give you an example of what I mean in just talking about the lofty romantic thing
Mhm.
versus the purpose thing. I came into marriage thinking that, hey, if we get so focused on, you know, purpose and this unified sense of purpose and all that. And of course, I married you because you're beautiful and you're smart and you're like, oh man, right?
Mhm.
So that was a given, right?
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
should be a given. Okay. All right, peoples. It should be a given. Okay. You should be getting with someone that you are attracted to
Mhm.
and all that. And you can stand to look at for another 20 years,
Right.
right? So, I check those boxes for
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm.
And I think I did great. Um so I'm thinking with that foundation being there, of course,
Mhm.
if it's very purpose focused and all of that, we should be able to lock in and just like get to going at purpose, and all the love and romance would just be a byproduct of that.
Yeah.
And man, it should be like a pretty decent pace of like great things,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
I had no idea that you would be an education all within itself,
Mhm.
and the type of things that I now believe that only you could have taught me
Yeah.
as a person. You
Mhm.
know, um, I now know that I think, marriage in general, but especially for me, was the only thing valuable enough, the only thing intimate enough, the only thing that could get deep enough in my heart to give me certain educations to make changes,
Mhm.
to grow
Mhm.
in certain ways, to just transform who I am,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How I think, you know, my perspective, intrinsic qualities about myself, right?
Mhm.
And there's so many seasons and stages of life that we've walked through, um, that of course these things didn't happen overnight, right?
Right. Mhm.
Um, so once again, that intersection between my thoughts, even that romantic thing, but these other lessons that marriage is, right?
Mhm.
And because I valued it so much, it was the only thing I would have stuck in long enough
Mhm.
to let it educate me,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
I mean, do you think most people are even thinking that there's an education that you're signing up for?
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's like it's the most challenging university
It is.
you will ever sign up for.
No, I don't think people are thinking that whatsoever, you know? And I think that's evident in, music and culture and media and movies and, all the things that we see, and conversations that we witness too. I
Yeah,
don't think people are thinking that at all. I don't think people were thinking that back, when we were younger, in our early adulthood and
yeah,
teenage years.
yeah,
I don't think they're thinking that now either.
yeah,
And I will say for myself, I um definitely came in with more emphasis on the romance. I definitely came in feeling entitled to it too.
oh
I was
wow,
very entitled to my dreams coming true, the fantasy of this princess knight in shining armor reality,
yeah,
being happening exactly the way that I wanted it to or expected it to, because
yeah.
it was something that I had high in my mind for a long time,
Now
you
listen,
know.
on another episode, I said you were a hood princess. You just admitted it. You just
I never
admitted
said that.
that you were a princess
I never
just
said that.
waiting on your knight and shining
I
armor to
never
come rescue you and
said
take you off into the sunset.
no. I also said that's how you
It's on
describe,
record.
but that's you describe that. I would never describe that in my life that way.
You heard it for yourself. Hood
But I
princess.
did have high expectations. Um, Earlier you talked about, having a sense of like fulfillment that's going to come when you, get married. Because, it's nice to find someone that you even have the potential to, date, get to know. And then when you make the decision, like, yeah, I want to spend the rest of my life with this person, when you get to the other side of that, you want to feel like, your expectations are being met, like you're fulfilled in that decision, and you want to feel that right away.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know? I
yeah.
feel like, I know I definitely came in with that emphasis, and so likewise, I did not come in expecting to be educated. And you talked about seasons too. That played a
Mhm.
factor as well. Coming off of like a rigorous collegiate experience into marriage, I was not trying to be educated about anything else. I graduated, got my degree. I'm ready to chill. I'm ready to stop. I don't want to be educated anymore. I want to take a break and I want to I just want to get into life. I want to work. I want to enjoy my husband. I want to have this, romantic marriage fantasy. You know what
Mhm.
I'm saying? But I didn't, I resisted the idea of like being educated at another phase and level of life,
Yeah.
and yeah.
I mean, what I hear under it, it's really the education of sacrifice,
Mhm.
you know? You had already sacrificed years, and now you're like, "Hey, I want a season of reward," and this marriage is, like,
Yes.
the biggest piece of starting my season of reward, right?
Yes. Yes.
And, because I'll admit it, because I was so purpose driven,
Mhm.
it was more like, "No, we're just getting started on the work,"
Right. Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Like
"Let's
this.
get
Let's
to
roll these
work and
sleeves
let's get
up.
to, get to going,"
let's
right?
get let's get to work.
And
Yeah.
I didn't realize it took me a long time to accept the sacrifice that I was signing up for
Mhm.
and dying to myself. Like, so what I
Mhm.
mean is, I thought to be a good man and a good husband, it was
Mhm.
gonna be about my leadership,
Mhm.
right? And it
Mhm.
was gonna be about me having a vision and having direction, me taking accountability and having something that I thought came from the Lord
Mhm.
too,
Yeah.
like clear, concise vision, direction, and all that type of stuff. I didn't anticipate that the sacrifice of I, I didn't anticipate. I thought I did a lot of great due diligence to see whether the directions I wanted to go was the directions you wanted to go too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
But I didn't anticipate the sacrifice of putting you first as much
Mm.
and like having to die to myself and to like submit myself to the pace and the direction, that would be needed,
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
for our marriage because I couldn't even conceptualize it,
Right. Yeah. Yep.
I thought, "Hey, I'm putting God first."
Mhm.
I did a lot of great due diligence, I thought,
Mhm.
about who I'm choosing.
Mhm.
I asked the questions.
Yeah.
I
Did
laid
my
it all out.
research.
I did my research. I did my due diligence and discovery,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking like, yes,
Mhm.
great. Let's go. We can jump in
Mhm.
here and get to this work.
Yeah.
And once we really got into life
Mhm.
and life started lifing,
Mhm.
the things I did not anticipate in the pace in me having to really get to know you
Yeah.
and not get to know you based on just what you tell me,
Yeah. Yeah.
but get to know you as a person and watch your habits and your
Mhm.
tendencies, get to
Mhm.
know your soul,
Mhm.
get to know where you are,
Mhm.
who you really are spiritually,
Mhm.
and that's not something in totality in a moment. It's
No.
something you have to kind of like dwell with and live with over
Mhm.
time and
Mhm.
learn to trust the process and the pace. And
Yeah.
it's seasons of frustration,
Mhm.
but I would didn't know what that frustration was doing to me and
Yeah.
how it was educating me.
Right.
Like it was adding patience and grace to me.
Yeah.
It was humbling me. It
Mhm.
was I mean, it was doing so many things that in the midst of it happening, you know, I wouldn't have told you I needed that.
Right. For
I
sure.
would have said, I
I
don't
don't
need
need
a matter of
that.
fact, if you would have told me that's what I'm signing up for on the front end, maybe I'd have been
Mhm.
like,
That
you
part.
know what?
That part,
You
Joe.
know what?
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
But now, 15 years later, I realize I don't think anything could have educated me like that and
Mhm.
could have transformed me
Yeah.
or refined me,
Right.
like marriage can,
Yes.
right?
I can.
Or did,
Right. I can
right?
totally relate to that because I had marriage in such a high place and it was such a high goal and something I knew I wanted in my life. from an early age. It was something I was always aiming for. You know, I really felt like that was the only thing God could get my attention through to make me change,
Oh
because it
man,
was
yeah,
such a high thing. I was holding it so high,
yeah.
and I really idolized it, to be honest.
Oh
Like, I
wow.
learned that later, but yeah, marriage was very much like an idol for me.
Mm,
So I feel like God actually used that to say, well, there's not much other things that will probably get your attention the
wow.
way this thing you desire so much will.
Yeah, let
And
me. I want you to continue. Keep going down your path, but
mm-hmm,
I want to echo the same thing
yeah,
because it wasn't so much that I idolized it. I just never loved anything more than I love you.
I understand.
I've never loved anything enough
Right.
for it to teach me certain lessons.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I feel you.
Oh
I
man.
feel
Like
you. Yes.
it
Yeah.
took me loving something
Mm-hmm.
enough
Mm-hmm.
to even tolerate certain lessons
Yes.
to be learned.
Yes. Yes.
Anything else would have been like,
Right.
you're out of here.
Gone.
Gone. I'm not learning this
Right.
lesson. No,
Yes.
I
That's right. I
refuse.
don't need this lesson.
Yes, man. I'm withdrawing from this class.
Right.
Okay. You know,
Yes.
but it's the level in which I love you
Yeah.
that even made it possible for me to learn certain
Yeah.
lessons,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
But continue.
Yeah. I'm just
Yes.
saying the same thing. Like, I I idolized the idea. It wasn't even just marriage, because marriage to me came along with this idea of being in love. Like,
Mm,
so my emphasis was on this emotional bond and, like,
mhm.
intimacy and, all of that. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking, I'm putting that first. That was my priority
Yeah.
coming in. Like, I
Yeah,
had
that
this
idea.
expectation for,
Yeah, that
yeah,
idea was almost a being of itself. I
that,
just
yeah.
came to be the actor
That's
to play the
yes,
part.
that's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah, yeah,
Which was
yeah.
so messed up, but it was the reality, right?
Yeah, and I had to tap dance at your speed and your rate. Yeah, yeah, but continue. I'm sorry. I started to vent a little bit. Come on. Go
But
ahead.
no, it's the truth.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so I was more like, hey, if we reach this place of this emotional connection and intimacy and this fulfillment that I'm looking for, this in love idea,
Yeah.
then out of that love comes our productivity and all this other stuff. So
Yeah.
we were very much like opposite in our
I mean,
prioritization.
diametrically opposed
Opposed,
because I
yes.
was like, love for
For
what?
what?
Like, if we
We
do
gotta get
purpose, the
the
love
love
will
will
be
come.
there. Like, if we have nothing in common and
Right.
no collective purpose,
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
all this lovey dovey for? Right?
Right.
And then I will say something from a male's perspective, and not all men are a monolith, but this is a common thread
Mhm.
about love
Mhm.
and marriage and things
Yeah.
like that for men. We don't do the Disney princess thing.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
even if we did, it would still be teaching us the same
Mhm.
message, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
The women in the Disney princess movies, they get to sit in high towers.
Right.
They get to be just even if they have a villain,
Mhm.
well, that villain is trying to, kidnap them because they love them so much.
Mhm. Mhm.
It is the male
Right.
that all he's doing is sacrificing.
Yeah.
He's slaying dragons.
Mhm.
He is going through forests that come
Right.
alive and try to kill him.
Right.
He's going through he is putting his life on the line
Yep.
just to go get this love. So Disney never lied to us,
No, right.
Disney was trying to
To
tell
tell
us,
you
hey,
the
bro,
truth.
you signing up, you're signing up to put your life on the line for this.
Right.
So there
Yeah.
is either a conscious or a subconscious
Mhm.
idea of love comes with sacrifice,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And to tell the truth, it's typically when men are dating women that we are making sacrifices, but the connotation could be a lot more just about pleasure and having
Yeah.
fun and fun
Yeah.
times and good things like that.
Yeah.
But I think most men know that the moment we get married, the connotation of this person totally changes. This
Mhm.
becomes a person I am responsible for,
Mhm.
and I need to completely put it all on the line for
Mhm.
this person. Assuming you're a good man and you understand the
Right.
gravity of marriage,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And some people are not fond of that,
Yeah, that's true.
of that concept, right? Some
Yeah.
people opt out, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
That type of thing, but it
Mhm.
does come with a lot, right?
Yeah, for sure. Now I
So
feel like Disney lied to me, because You are not just
You mean I wasn't the prince that you are? No,
no.
no, I'm just
What I'm
joking.
saying
Yeah,
is,
yeah, yeah.
you were the prince I needed.
Oh
And I'm
yeah.
so glad God sent me you because I needed someone, first of all, that I really respected,
Mhm.
but that had vision and purpose. Because for me, I would have been content. We could have been not doing a goddamn thing if we was in love and just sitting around having all the intimate conversations and having this emotional bond. I just would have been completely okay with that, right? But
Yeah,
that's not real life. And
yeah.
when you think about what marriage really is, because that's a part of this conversation, you need to be building something. Like God created marriage for a purpose
Yeah.
that is going to produce something and it's supposed to leave a legacy,
Right,
right?
right.
So just sitting around hoping to be in love, go out to eat, do date nights all the time,
Yeah.
but not really building towards something
Hmm.
I don't really think that's God's idea.
Listen, even the things they tell us to be building towards, like the 3-story white house with a white picket fence and
Right.
a
2 kids and a
2.5
dog and a
kids and a
dog.
dog,
Yeah.
we think that's the building. Like,
Yeah.
no, there's something much greater
For sure.
that should transcend just those things that you
Yes.
should make you come together and that you should be building,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But then there's these secondary lessons that are beyond that only God knows why
Mhm.
he chose that person to
Right.
come into your life
Yep.
to teach and educate you, to
Mhm.
build something in your character, and build
Mhm.
something in your spirit,
Mhm.
build something in your soul, right?
Mhm.
And those are the things that, oh man, 15 years later, I now really know why he brought you in particular to be the person for me to go on this journey
Mhm.
with. And I think that's the important thing to know.
Yeah.
Like, you think you're choosing someone based on you having all the answers of what you
Right.
need and what you think you want,
Mhm.
but there's a whole nother dimension to why a person is drawn to you
Right.
and why they were sent and divinely orchestrated
Right.
to educate you,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
They become a curriculum for you.
Mhm.
They become a mirror to you to
Oh
show
my
you
gosh.
yourself.
Yes.
They become so much to you and
Mhm.
you evolving as
Mhm.
a person,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you talked about the romanticism and its intersection with my,
Purpose driven
yeah, because the truth is
focus.
I was more in love with purpose,
Oh,
you
without
know? Yeah, I was
question.
far more in love with
Yeah.
purpose, right?
Yep.
And I didn't even, I thought it was the smartest thing, and I didn't know there was a level of conditional love in it, to where it's like I can love at the condition in which this
We
person
doing
is
stuff.
in sync with the purpose,
Right. You on the page.
Yeah, yeah, come
Yeah.
on now. That's how the Lord know.
Yeah.
No.
No. No.
But
Yeah.
yeah, man, and the process of like really laying your life on the line for a person and
Mhm.
all the things that you go through in life to where you really surrender your heart to loving a person and being able to see them at their best, but seeing them at their worst too,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
I mean, and here's another thing, just a sidebar. This is a whole nother episode, but you need to get to seeing some of that worst before you cross that line. Okay? Get on some people's nerves before you cross a broom, right? Make them mad now. You need to see it. You need to see that monster early, okay? Right? Because, a lot of times we make things so much about romance and so much about the good times
Yeah.
that we don't get to the deep
Yeah.
stuff. We don't
Yeah.
ask the hard questions.
Yeah.
We don't really push some buttons and
Yeah.
really get there.
Mhm.
And then we come together into such a significant, the most significant relationship you're gonna have,
Right.
and then we figure out who we marry after
Yeah.
we're into it,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And in one of our previous episodes, we really talked about our story and how faith was such the center of how we came together.
Mhm.
Oh man, I'm so glad because I know it's the glue
Oh, for
that's been
sure.
able to make us or help us overcome our hard times
Yeah, for
and
sure.
things that we might not have been able to survive if it was just focused on this superficial love
Yep.
and this idea of
Yes.
romanticism and all that type of stuff.
Yes.
Because those things fade
Exactly.
in seasons and things like that.
Yep.
But if you have a higher purpose, and if
Right.
you have a chief aim, and something that transcends you,
Mhm.
that you really feel is what brought you together, it can really help you. And
Yes.
then you should couple it on one of the things that we talked about in our story too, just truly being friends. I mean, I
Right.
feel like these two things, this
Yes.
higher purpose and this
True friendship.
true friendship, and
Mhm.
just our commitment to God,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
It's what was able to keep us
Yeah.
together. There's a scripture that says a threefold cord is
It's
not
not easily
easily broken.
broken. Yeah.
So it's like God and our commitment to Him
Yeah.
and our commitment to purpose,
Mhm.
plus our friendship with each other.
Mm.
Once we couldn't stand each other,
Yes.
I know for me, for sure,
Mhm.
that's what made me like really stick in this,
Yeah.
because my honor for God
Mhm.
and my honor for purpose, and
Mhm.
feeling like, yeah, of course I have a purpose as an individual, but I really feel and felt that, well, we were brought together to do this purpose together,
Together. Yeah.
and I don't want to do it without you.
Yeah.
So it made it hard for me in times where it was tempting too, to
Yeah.
say like, oh, I can't walk away. And then also, just our friendship and all that type of thing. So it's aided to stick in, to learn these lessons,
Mhm.
and to just be refined,
Mhm. Mhm.
I now listen, I've always thought I was a great person.
Mhm.
But there are people who knew me, and have known me a long time, and knew me before we got together and got
Mhm.
married,
Mhm.
and know me now. And I often hear people be like, "You're so different, man," and you're so, and I'm like, "How?" Now I know I'm different, but it's kind of a testament of people. What I hear is them saying, "Oh man, you're refined," and
Yeah.
there's a different grace to you, and a different nuance to you, right?
Mhm.
And it's what marriage can do,
Yeah.
through the educations, but
Mhm.
those educations are not easy educations all the time,
No.
right?
Certainly not. Certainly not. And, I think when we talked about the conditional love.
Yeah.
And, I think when you come in with preconceived notions, you set yourself up to have that conditional
The
love.
ideals.
Yes.
Your first marriage often is to the
That's
ideals
right.
that you have,
That's
right?
right. Yep.
And it's, man, the divorcing your ideals
That's right.
to embrace the reality
That's
of
right.
who you're with,
That's
and what
right.
it's going to take to have something lasting with this person.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
You have to go through that process. And that's part of that refining
Yeah.
of like, and the death you talked about, like the sacrifice. You're really talking about dying to yourself,
Yeah.
dying to your ideas so that you can um, kind of birth and manifest this collective, beautiful God idea,
Yeah.
with another person.
Hmm.
And, I remember there was a period of time, and this is where a relationship with God really does help because, when you want to walk away, when you're frustrated and you're praying or whatever, the Holy Spirit will check you real quick,
Yeah.
and tell you to humble yourself, or that you need to get in place, or you need to change your perspective. And, I'm grateful for that for me personally, because that really was a part of that refining. And but one of the things that I remember the Holy Spirit saying to me and God bringing to me to mind is a scripture that talks about accept a seed, go into the ground, like talking about Jesus when he was like buried in the ground and
Yeah.
God raised him back up. You
Yeah.
know, I felt like God was like, you need to kill every ideal that you have. Just let it go.
Yeah.
Let it go,
Yeah.
bury it in the ground, and let me resurrect it in the glory that I want it to be. You
Wow.
know?
Well, listen, I'll say for sure, as for all men, like you said, the scripture says, unless a seed is buried in the ground and dies,
Hmm.
it will not spring forth many more.
Yep.
As a man, when we think about leadership and all of that, some people think about the romanticized aspect of that,
That's
like being the
true.
leader, being in charge, all the
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
You need to be prepared to lay your life down and bury your seed in the ground and die to yourself
Hmm.
as a man and as a leader, so that you can bring about fruitfulness to
Hmm.
your family and to
Hmm.
your relationship, And even to, your spouse and wives and things like that,
Mhm.
you need to be prepared to lay your life on the line, right? And
Mhm.
I think it's one of the great mysteries of marriage and how we get to, the Bible talks about, understanding God and the power of his blood and the fellowship of his suffering,
Mhm.
right? Being acquainted with
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
Well, we become more Christ like when we embrace this side
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
marriage,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And Christ, well, the church is the bride of Christ,
Right.
right? Well, what made us his bride? The
Mhm.
sacrifice that he made for us.
Right.
So we get the opportunity to experience being Christ like when we embrace this aspect of it. But it's the beauty of it because what greater love than though a man who lays his
It's
life
like
down for a
down.
friend, right?
Yep.
So it's an aspect of love that is not often talked about.
No.
We more talk about the self-gratifying aspects of love. Like,
Exactly.
oh man, I want to deal with someone that makes me feel good, that makes me
Mhm.
happy, that's sexy, that looks good,
Mhm.
that all the stuff that
Mhm.
serves me,
Yep.
right? And
That's
makes
right.
me feel good,
Yep. Yep.
Yes, man, sometimes we want something that, oh man, I got a trophy. I
Right.
got, the things that just make my whole aesthetic better and all
Right.
that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And there maybe isn't enough education prior to going into marriage about
Mhm.
the sacrifice that really comes with it
Right.
and what we need to be prepared,
Right. Yep.
and whether we get educated on the front end or we will definitely be educated on the back end
For sure.
once you're in the relationship in order to have a healthy one,
Without
right?
question. Yeah.
But what a beautiful education, you
It
know?
is. It
And you
is.
need something greater than you to help you finish the curriculum,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And to go through all the lessons and the way it can transform you, right?
Yeah.
So that younger Candace that romanticized, you know, the idea of marriage and relationship, if you were sitting down with her and you were giving her a nugget about what she needs to know, or there may be some Candaces out there by another name, right?
Mhm.
I know it may be hard to encapsulate it all in one statement, but I mean, what would you tell her, about the journey, she would be embarking on and what she needs to know?
I would say I would tell her to be humble, and I would teach her what that means. Because I realized I was trying to be humble, and
Mm,
the idea of humility I had in my mind, right? My attempt to express humility was there, but the reality is I did not humble myself to learn. And I never even it took me a long time to get myself to a place where I was um just open to letting God rewire my my plans and change my plans and change my thoughts. So I would tell a younger me or someone like me to be humble to learn. And before elevating, even if you believe the idea you have is a God idea, because there were nuances of my expectations, especially when I met you, that I felt like I could sense God in our relationship and I felt like this was the right direction. But always check with God, like, check your heart, check your mind. Don't assume that because you're well intentioned that you're right. Um, I would say come into relationship looking for what you can offer and not for what you can take, and look for how to be led by God to be a blessing to someone um, first, and trust God that the seeds that you sow of blessing and pouring into someone else, He'll allow you to reap a harvest on that over time.
yeah. If I was talking to young Joe
Yeah.
or other Joes out there in the world, once again by another name,
Mhm.
it would be a twofold thing. It would be first off that coming into marriage means that God has found you to be a suitable seed to be planted into a ground as a sacrifice to bring forth fruitfulness.
Mhm.
But like any seed, first, oh man, There's some dirt and there's some tilling and there's some weeds that need to be pulled on. There's some pruning that's going to need to be done. Man, there's some watering that's going to need to be done to that field, that you're planted in. There's hard work that's going to have to be done if you want to see the fruit spring forth, right?
Mhm.
And you need to prepare yourself for that work.
Mhm.
And it doesn't happen overnight. It happens over seasons
Mhm.
that you then see the fruit. And
Mhm.
it's not about just your own self-indulgence, you
Mm.
know, and it's not about just the end results of whatever it is you want to get to, but it's about a commitment to that work. And
Mm.
it's about loving the land, right?
Mhm.
Loving
Mhm.
the land, right?
Yeah.
But I would also say that, well, if you chose right, then God has brought this person to be a beautiful education for you
Mhm.
and to buckle up, you know, and pace yourself, man, and, you know, be all about learning the curriculum
Mhm.
and letting this education transform you,
Yeah.
into the man you're intended to be.
Mm.
And it's divine purpose and divine insights. And over the course of time, you'll be able to extract those jewels, but it'll make you better.
Yeah.
But you're going to need um, something higher
Yeah.
than you. You need that third chord, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
You definitely need the aid of God, to help you be the man, be the leader, um, but simultaneously be a forever learner through the experience too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful education.
It is.
It is. Well, hey, this was yet another one, and it's only our pleasure to, share our life and
Mm.
our thoughts and our insights with you.
Mhm.
We hope that it is it's a benefit, it's a blessing.
Yeah.
We hope that you enjoy. We always would love for you to join our family. Um, hit that subscribe button, reach out to us,
Yes.
give us your feedback, man. And
Till next time.
till next time, we love you. We'll be seeing you.
Bye, y'all.